Next for us here is James Cook getting drafted in round 2. And how does that affect Singletary and Moss? I'm definitely going to go hard on my opinion on this one, Mark. So I'm going to let you kick us off here.
Okay. Well, I see James Cook being drafted in the first round of rookie drafts, and I feel like he may be, before it's all said and done, the most overdrafted rookie in the draft.
My golly! He's a genius, ladies and gentlemen, because he agrees. Anyways, keep going. We're good.
Yeah. He does not profile as a 3-down back. He's a very good pass catching back, undersized to be a workhorse. I really feel like it's going to be a big time committee there. I feel like Zach Moss will be the odd man out, most likely. I think they lost confidence in him. He just hasn't shown enough. Singletary is he's done okay, but he's undersized as well. So it's like they got a bunch of, they got a couple of little bitty guys that can probably share the load. Singletary was targeted a lot more than you would think because the numbers weren't there, but he actually got a lot of targets. So I think James Cook was brought in because Devin Singletary wasn't getting it done as a pass catcher. Moss is not a guy that they want to have out there a lot. James Cook is going to be their pass catching back. That's my take on it. It's just going to be a big old committee. And those guys that drafted James Cook in the first round of the rookie draft thinking I've got an RB1 or 2, I think they're going to be disappointed. I really do.
Congratulations. You drafted Nyheim Hines or JD McKissick in the first round. Round of applause. Pat yourself on the back. That's the upside you're drafting. I do not get it. Again, that's the upside you're drafting. And so I co-manage in a league with a guy we both know, and he liked James Cook. He did. And we were talking about it. He goes, that's just what the league going to. Look at Gibson. No, Gibson was 6'1", 228 coming out, not 5'11", 190. So you talked about size. Let's go into that a little bit. So James Cook is the tallest running back now on their roster at 5'11", which is staggering. But he's the lightest running back on the roster, Mark, at 190 pounds. I think he ate a few bowls of ice cream before the weigh-in for the combine because he weighed 199, which is about 11 pounds heavier than he ever was listed at Georgia, which was interesting to me. Mm-hmm. Now let's talk about that size for a minute. Is he going to be the goal line back? No. Josh Allen is still the goal line back in that offense. And even if not, you look at some of their guys. Moss was 5'9", 220. Singletary was 5'7", 203. So just thicker built guys, even though they're shorter. Both of those, James Cook is by far the fastest of those 3 running backs, how he measures out. But the other 2 guys do have good burst. So that was interesting to me. So as I was thinking about this, James Cook really shut up in rookie drafts because of the landing spot, right? I would have been much more intrigued by a bigger body back going there because I would have been like, okay, this guy can get some of the work. I'm not worried about the pass catching role because tell me the last mobile quarterback that just passed the ball a ton to a running back. I asked somebody that question the other day and they told me Brian Westbrook. I was like, well, first off, Donovan McNabb wasn't really a mobile quarterback. Like he wasn't a rushing quarterback in the same avenue as Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen. Could he run? Yes, but he wasn't necessarily that guy. He definitely looked to throw first. So when I think about that, that was one big thing for me. I was like, I don't like this landing spot at all because Josh Allen is going to tuck the ball and run 5 yards or 20 instead of check it down. You did mention Singletary had a lot of targets. I would challenge that and go in and look at how many of those targets were throws in the dirt when the play broke down. How many of that was Singletary was in the flat, he gets credited with a target. Because if I go back and watch their games, I see a lot of that. I don't see a lot of, hey, he's open across the middle, throw it to him.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So that was another thing for me. I do think Cook can be used as a weapon. It's kind of interesting to me there. But again, I just don't see the touch upside. And so we're going to talk about touch for a minute. And I don't mean to bury James Cook. That's not what I'm trying to do. But I hope somebody listens to this and stops drafting him in the first round. That's what I hope for. So if I told you you could get 9.3 touches a game. Let's say 9 touches a game from a running back. Is that somebody you want to draft in the first round? Because that was his best season. His senior season, he averaged 9.3 touches a game. And they played teams in there. Yes, they played an SEC schedule, but don't forget Vanderbilt's in the SEC, and they did play Vanderbilt. They also played UAB and Charleston Southern, and he still never got more than, I think only there was a stat, only like 4 times in his entire collegiate career did he get more than 11 touches in a game, which is absurd. He was at Georgia for 4 years. If you take all of his years that he was there, in 46 career games, I'm looking at my stats because I don't want to mess this one up, he averaged 5 rushing attempts per game. And you're like, well, he's a pass catching back, Evan. Okay. He averaged 6.45 total touches a game. I hope that he can become a flex for you if you're drafting him in the first round. That's all I got on that. And I'm going to lead us off on our next one because I'm so glad you put these in back-to-back categories. Because if you remember, Singletary, Mark, was a third-round pick. He was picked 74 overall, fairly high third-round pick. Moss, also a third-round pick. He was picked 86th overall. And, of course, James Cook was a second-round pick. In quotations, he was a very late second-round pick. He was picked 63.
Okay.
So I want you to remember that because everybody's telling us, don't worry about Singletary and Moss. They were third-rounders. Cook is a second. Okay. So as we go into our next category, and everybody knows I'm an Antonio Gibson truther, and we're going to talk about him because there was a third-round running back, Mark, and Brian Robinson. And unlike our previous third-round running backs we're talking about, everybody's saying, worry about Brian Robinson. He was drafted in the third round. Okay. What is Brian? Back up a little bit. You can already see it steaming off of me. Like it's coming out the ears, man.
Take a deep breath, man.
It's absolutely ludicrous to me. And I am a Gibson truther, and I'm not saying Brian Robinson is a bad prospect. But for the people that are saying that he is going to completely take this job from Antonio Gibson, that is a falsity. You are just spreading negativity into the atmosphere that I do not need in my life. Okay. First off, it's just not true, and you can't back it up by anything. So I've heard the takes of, well, Brian Robinson is going to be the goal line back. Okay. He's not as fast, not as quick, and not as big as Antonio Gibson. He measured in at 6'2". I wrote it down. He measured in at 6'2", 220. Antonio Gibson was 6 foot, 228. So he's definitely a bulkier big. Yes, Robinson's taller, but he's also lighter in that sense. He's a lighter back and leaner. Okay, so he's not a bigger back than Gibson. All right, well, does he catch the ball better? I dare you to try to make that argument with me. We'll talk about Gibson and pass catching for another time because it still don't make sense that he was a receiver in college and they just continue to keep throwing the ball to McKissick. It's just absurd. At the boiling point of all this, Antonio Gibson is bigger, faster, catches the ball better. He had a 99th, one more time, 99th percentile speed score for his size and speed. He ran a 4.3940. A guy that in back-to-back rookie seasons that some people drafted in the second, some people drafted in the third of their rookie drafts. He's had 1,000 yards, 44 plus catches, 10 plus total touchdowns, borderline RB1 if you're in a 12 team, RB2 if you're in a 10 team. I'll make sure to say that because Ian will be all over me if I don't. What more do you want from the guy? I think, and I do think this may be the first time we disagree, but I think Brian Robinson was drafted as insurance and not competition. And the floor is yours.
No, I think that this is when people are panicking on that. I don't think there's so much need for the panic. They profile much the same as the type of back, but you're exactly right that Antonio Gibson is a much better athlete. It's a little concerning to me that they may, I don't think they've lost confidence in him, but maybe are they worried about the injuries? He hasn't caught on the way that we think he should have or could have by now. So, there's a little something that just doesn't add up there. So I don't think that if it had been another back besides Robinson, maybe I'd be panicking a little more. But like I said, I looked at it and I was like, this is the same profile. Yeah. And he's not the athlete that this guy is. So maybe it's just to split touches a little bit more, but maybe take a little bit of the heat off of Antonio Gibson and spell him, for 10 touches a game, maybe 15 at the most, but I don't think there's any need for panic. I really agree with you that this is not a threat to Antonio Gibson. There's just that little thing that in the back of my mind that bugs me, that is there something else there that we don't know about the injuries? It seemed to be a little bit chronic there. I would say that's probably it. Just guessing, not that I know any inside information, but what else would it be? Because it did seem kind of odd there. And they fought hard to bring McKissick back. They could have let him walk, and they wanted to bring him back for some reason.
So to play devil's advocate a little bit, right? I can see the panic from the standpoint of they brought in a guy, they've made the comments of a committee backfield, they want a 1-2 punch. One thing I will, and of course Gibson has had some injuries. Now they've all been different. He's had a shin injury, he's had turf toe, both difficult things to get over. We never know at the end of the day what NFL teams know. You look at the Marquise Brown trade for Arizona, and you're wondering, how is he going to tie this in? Well, Arizona makes that trade because they already know about the Hopkins situation. A lot of times teams know about even suspensions months before they happen, and there's been a report out that they did know that, and that did factor into that trade. So when you look at stuff like that, we don't know. So I do think as a Gibson owner, you shouldn't be blind to the fact that you still need a handcuff. And I do think Jarrett Patterson is no longer the handcuff. Brian Robinson is. You can get him in the third round, which tends to be the going rate for a handcuff. It seems to be. So I think in some leagues, right? So I do think you try to grab him if you can. The only other thing I'll say about the McKissick piece of this, which is kind of interesting. So everybody likes to throw that up, but McKissick's basically on a 1-year deal where he's going to make maybe $2 million with incentives. His salary is actually only like $500,000, and then they have a potential out in the contract for next year. Mm-hmm. Who's to say that they don't want to move Gibson into more of that pass catching role and split some of his early down carries, which honestly would probably be a good thing for Gibson. I think getting him out in space and having that opportunity, he'd still have rushing opportunity. I mean, if you look at the opportunities McKissick got last year, he still had a lot of touches. If you give him a McKissick plus role, he's still going to be the numbers he's putting up now, maybe even better. And you give a lesser role to Brian Robinson next year. I think that's something they could have looked at. Also have to factor in McKissick did have a season-ending injury. How will he come back? They want to have a second back for that. They didn't have one before the draft. The last point I will make, and this isn't really a point, this is wishful thinking, to be completely honest. Last year, we were promised a CMC workload, Mark. Gibson, and I'm saying we as all of the Gibson owners, we were promised. Sure. They didn't do it. This offseason, they're saying, hey, we're going to do a committee, ladies and gentlemen. That's what we're going to do. So maybe it's reverse psychology in the league, and they're going to give them a CMC workload this year. That's what I'm going with. That's my wishful thinking.
You do that. I'm going to bet the under, but you go ahead and do that.